Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. The only constant is change, and a lot is happening right now, not only here on our planet with us, society, the earth, geophysics and more, but also with our sun, the solar system. Solar maximum is now over. We are in the descending phase. Our sunspot numbers for February were under 80. If you look at the data, which we're going to do, in general, we see that our solar maximum cycle for solar cycle 25 started January of 2023. It's been about 3 years. Numbers in general were over 100. Now they are below 100 and the sun is almost devoid of sunspots. We're definitely in a new regime of solar activity. There are going to be increases and decreases down to solar minimum, which should be around 2029, 2030, 2031, but the descending phase has begun. We've been loaded with a bunch of energy as a result of solar maximum. A solar maximum stronger than solar cycle 24's maximum. The original estimate was that they were going to be about the same. Even a little further back before that estimate was put out in 2019, some solar physicists thought that solar cycle 25 is actually going to be weaker than solar cycle 24. Well, in fact, it was stronger, getting closer to that historic average. So after these sort of solar maximum periods, we usually see an increase in earthquake activity. We'll look at that data. We do see, there is some data suggesting that there's an increase in cyclone activity, the frequency of cyclones, especially during the descending phase and during the minimum phase. So expect more extreme weather events on our planet as a result of all this solar energy being loaded in. But there is much more than that. We see that there is a correlation, a very strong correlation between what we could call spontaneous social processes, or basically like revolutions societally, with solar maximum periods. People just get energized and charged up by all this solar energy. And well, you have things like revolutions and riots and wars more common during solar maximum and in that period directly afterwards. That's occurring right now. Of course, a new war just broke out in the Middle East, no surprise. And with what's happening there, tremendous amount of energy is being released with all these missiles and bombs that are being dropped. That's also going to affect our weather going further out. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And there are some planetary energies that are very, very, very strong that will be active for the next 4, 5, 6 years. Planetary alignments, planetary geometry, they don't necessarily control the nature of time. They're like a clock. They tell you what time it is. They tell you what the quality of the time is. And we have some very, very powerful ones. Specifically, the Neptune-Pluto opening sextile has its final close engagement range starting in 2026, going to about 2032. And we'll talk about what that means as it relates to nuclear weapons. Because the last time that they were in a close engagement was going from basically the 50s through the 90s. And well, we had a lot of nukes dropped on our planet during that time frame due to all the Cold War nuclear testing. Thousands, I think it was close to 2,000 nuclear tests on the books. Well, we're re-entering that engagement range. And now there's talk, especially with this new war in the Middle East, about nukes being dropped. And well, we have some people that would probably do that. They're probably crazy enough to do that, unfortunately. Common sense has left the building for at least some of the people in charge. In addition to that, we have a seismic burst occurring right now off the coast of Kamchatka. It could look like something bigger is coming. We've had an elevated increase in seismicity since the beginning of March, with there being, I think, 7 magnitude, or maybe it's 6 magnitude 6+ earthquakes in just about 7.5 days. So we are starting to see an increase in seismicity. Just now in March, we had, of course, the blood moon on the 3rd. We had Mercury inferior conjunction at Cazimi. Yesterday, we have strong planetary alignments right now with Earth, Venus, Saturn, Neptune. So there's a lot that's happening, a lot to discuss. And we also just had a fireball fly over Amsterdam. We've also had some fireballs be sighted over Canada. And right now is when we're passing through that part of the solar system that 3i Atlas traveled during its closest approach to the sun. It's perihelion back in October, November. So March and April are the key months for there potentially to be debris coming off interstellar object 3I Atlas raining down to Earth. Maybe these fireball sightings are related to that interstellar object. It's hard to say, but if we get an anomalous number of fireball sightings, I would feel pretty confident personally to attribute it to that. We have 3I Atlas performing its closest approach to Jupiter on the 16th of March, being about 0.35 astronomical units away at its closest, and Jupiter stationing direct on the 10th of March. So a lot of energies right now, a tremendous amount happening. So let us get into it. Let's first off look at our solar cycle data. Then we're going to talk about this seismic burst. We have been having some increased geomagnetic volatility over the past 24 hours. There has been active conditions, even 3 hours of G1 geomagnetic storming. So there has been that. But here we see our solar cycle data going back to solar cycle 22, right here. And so this is the mid 80s, solar cycle 22, 23, 24. This was the progression. We were going down, and I'll expand this out further. We see the full data set that NOAA has on their website at the bottom there. Here's solar cycle 25, this purplish red line, magenta, let's call it, that is the predicted values now going down, okay? So I could even turn that off because that's not the actual average, that's just predicted values. Here's solar cycle 25. Now, I'm going to look at some other solar cycles too, but what we see with solar cycles as it relates to sunspot numbers is they form kind of this plateau for every solar maximum. And there'll be variability within that, but clearly you see solar minimum right here, for example, and then you see this ramp up phase, that's the ascending phase. All of a sudden you start to get the magnetic field of the sun to flip. That's what's happening during a solar cycle, is that you have the actual magnetic field of the sun flipping about every 12 years. 11 to 12 years, there's a range, it's like 8 to 14 years, some are fast, some are long. So the actual magnetic field of the entire solar system changes its polarity on a human time scale multiple times in a normal person's life. The average lifespan, let's say, is 70, right? That's like nearly 6 flips. Or I think it's actually closer to 80. You're right, if you take the global, it's like closer to 80 for developed countries. That's close to even more than that. So it's quite a big polarity transition for the entire solar system. The Earth, of course, is embedded within that heliosphere. And we see that during the solar maximum, when the magnetic field is the most chaotic, that's why we have all these sunspots, right? So it's most just chaotic. Chaos being an order beyond our understanding, right? You have order, you have chaos. Chaos isn't necessarily disorderly, it's just an order beyond our ability to characterize that order. For example, you can have a lot of chaos with random number generators, but the actual code generating it could be quite simple and orderly. You just don't know the code. So during solar maximum, we get all these sunspots, and then during the solar cycle, they start to converge down towards the equator. We can show that again with our big sun here. This video, by the way, is taken during solar maximum. This is not up-to-date imagery for today, but the sunspots migrate down to the equator. At the very end, there's a termination event, and then there's something called racing to the poles, where all of a sudden solar flux pops back up again, and then we start to get the next solar cycle. So we see how they're spread out all across here, these mid-latitude regions with this video. I think it's from last year, 2025. Well, here we see solar cycle 23. We see that plateau roughly here. I mean, it's maybe extended out to there a little bit. We definitely see clear like ascension, and then consolidation, and then boom, solar maximum, and then descension, consolidation, then the descending phase very clearly. Solar cycle 24, you see this clear period, that zone right there. That's the solar maximum. It was a weak solar cycle to begin with. The bottom of a Gleisberg cycle, about 88-year-long variation in solar activity. There's a range that's like 80 to 100 years. Here is solar cycle 25. You see right there, the ascension, a plateau. That was 2022. About 7 or 8 months in 2022 where we shot up and then we plateaued. And then you clearly see right here with the beginning of 23 that we entered into solar maximum. So we see our values are October, November, December shot us over 100. That's really the beginning, I would say, of solar maximum. But we can basically say 2023 clearly to 2026. Now our latest values are in, and we see that it's down to 78.2. We did hit values slightly lower than that in May, 78.5. Oh, it looks like we actually, yeah, is that right? 78.5 for May, 78.2 for February. So we're now basically knocking at the very bottom of this established maximum zone. In general, except for 3 months here, I mean, maybe that's 97.6. In general, sunspot numbers have stayed over 100, and even in August of 24, they were over 200, 216. That's clearly the solar maximum zone. Now we're starting to go back down. We could see a further little bump up over 100 here and then a descent, but sunspots are almost non-existent on the sun right now. Solar flux is dying down. The polarity is starting to establish. So our sun is not dying, but we're closer to the descending phase, if not in the descending phase, than in solar maximum. I would say we're in the descending phase at this point. Now, if you zoom over here, we'll see similar data, okay? So just kind of want to show you the range of data here. We see there's that like maximum plateau. Here we see that maximum plateau. Here we see that maximum plateau. You can get variability within the descending phase. See here, solar cycle 18 goes down and shot back up, but it's still, quite a bit lower than that main maximum phase. So just because we're in the descending phase does not mean that we aren't going to see more variability and volatility from the sun. It's going to happen. We see sometimes solar cycles can be weird. Right? Look at solar cycle 14 there, huge swings up and down. Sometimes, this isn't the maximum, that's the maximum right there for solar cycle 11. So you get the idea. This is maybe a broad maximum there with like a real peak in the center here for solar cycle 9, but then you start to go down. So we could see this plateauing here, for example, for solar cycle 25, but we're right now through the main part of solar maximum. We're not getting back up to 216. I'd be shocked if we go back over 200 for the sunspot count. So all that is to say that this energy has been loaded into the Earth. And there's no going back from that. Every solar cycle loads its energy in, and back with solar cycle 24, we didn't have that much energy loaded in. Look at now how we've had more in 25 versus 24. So this entire period here for the 21st century, almost the entire 21st century, ignore like the very beginning there with solar cycle 23, right? Once we really started to get into it, we didn't have that much energy loaded in. We had tons of earthquakes pop off during this time frame there. We're going to look at that data. Now things are starting to go up. So let me show you this seismic burst that we have happening right now off the coast of Kamchatka, because this is happening as I am recording this live for you. Hello and welcome everyone. I'm your host Stefan Burns, geologist, geophysicist, space weather guy, your cosmic bro here to help you understand what's happening with the planet energetically. We examine all the things: earthquakes, volcanoes, solar activity, space weather, planetary geometry, alignment, comets, all this consciousness. Sometimes we touch on societal events. I don't like to touch on it too much, but it's all connected together. So sometimes I have to. I try to stay as neutral as possible because in general I'm a pretty neutral guy. But look at all the earthquakes that have popped off here off the coast of Kamchatka just in the past day. 4.9, 4.9, 5.9, that's the high right there in terms of magnitude. That was not that long ago, 1708 UTC, and the latest one there, 1954. So it's been about 3 hours because this one just popped off. It's actually been about 3.5 hours since that 5.9. But this is a significant seismic burst. Now, all of these are within that aftershock range, but the fact that we've had so many is kind of anomalous. And a 5.9 typically doesn't generate aftershocks like this. I mean, this is quite a lot. In addition to that, we saw a double seismic hit here off the coast of Japan, 5.7, 5.4 in rapid succession. You see that within just 9 minutes of each other. And what's interesting about this is close to the location that we had some swarming in November, just as this is right in that location where we had that magnitude 8.8 megaquake. So both of these areas right now resonating with some low-grade earthquakes. These aren't magnitude 6 or greater, but certainly here, that's a significant seismic burst that's unfolding in real time just in the past few hours. We just had a magnitude 5.5 here pop off in Greece. Quite a shaker. A lot of people felt this. So strong seismic shaking was felt by tens of thousands in Greece as a result of that magnitude 5.5. We also had a magnitude 5.1 here in Afghanistan just a bit more than 24 hours ago. We can click that on here. Here's that 5.1 right there. Afghanistan, these are land-based earthquakes I'm highlighting now. Also magnitude 5.1 there in Argentina, and some other earthquakes surrounding it, magnitude 4s, even a 4.9. So there have been some strong earthquakes in terms of people being able to feel them just in the past 24 hours or so. But now we have what's happening here with Kamchatka. And there was also a magnitude 5.9. It was a magnitude 6 when it first came in, 5.9 off the coast of Samoa and Tonga. So we've had two magnitude 5.9s today. And so just in general, we've been seeing increased activity now for the past week or so. If we go to our 7-day view, largest magnitude here, we see our strongest being a 6.4 there. This is Alaska. Look at all the earthquakes that's popped off in this area here. 6.3 there, Solomon Islands. There was also a 6.3 Fiji that popped off on the 1st of March, which won't be shown in this data because this is the past 7 days and now it's the 8th. But there's a 6.2, Indonesia, 6.0, Volcano Islands, Japan, right here. And then we get this 5.9 there with Kamchatka. So there's been quite a lot of seismic activity over the past week or so. Definitely an increase, not a huge increase, but things are ramping up. And we can expect to see more activity like that going forward. Before I show you that data, some historic data, I just want to quickly fill you in on the fact that we have been seeing some geomagnetic storming. This is our solar wind data for the past 7 days, including our geomagnetic activity with our KP index right here. So we see there right at the end of the 3rd universal time, we had 3 hours of G1 storming. Then we see this solar wind structure come in. The magnetic field got stronger, had a good configuration. All of a sudden now we are in active conditions. We had 3 hours of G1 storming right there. That's minor geomagnetic storming where the Earth's magnetic field is oscillating more than normal, but we've stayed in active conditions. We see the solar wind velocity ramped up, a bit of a high-speed stream impact. Solar wind density is dropping. That's something that we look at for earthquake activity, at least here on this channel. And there is an impact expected to come in. So the thing is that we're already preconditioned as a result of this high-speed stream. And if we look at our NOAA model, we see that there was a coronal mass ejection that was launched off on the 6th. And we see that they expect this to be a flank impact, both in terms of the top-down ecliptic view and also the south-north view. But they are expecting there to be a slight bump in the plasma density as a result. And so we could be seeing more geomagnetic activity over the days ahead. And because we're already preconditioned, this could be more than they expect. Their forecast is just for active conditions, not G1 storming, but because we're already in active conditions, maybe we'll get G1 storming. Maybe we get G2. We'll have to wait and see. But there is some significant planetary geometry coming up tomorrow. So heliocentric. So when we see that, we can kind of expect these sort of geostorms to be a little bit stronger than normal because the planets have an impact over the energetic conditions here on Earth. We can look at that with our mastering the zodiac right here. And let's pull this up. So we can go to heliocentric, and load this. Yeah, okay. And maybe I set it up like that. So, and well, I'm going to have to do this too. This is fine. Here we have our heliocentric chart for today. And if I go forward just one day, you'll see this geometry really click into place. Here we have Mercury in a trine. This is heliocentric, so the sun is in the center, okay? This is the Earth right there. The moon's, of course, going to be there as well. Here we have Mercury in a trine to Pluto and also to Uranus. Uranus being the planet of sudden change and disruption. Pluto being the planet of power and really, transformation. Mercury being the activator of this configuration. And Mercury is making angles to everything else. So we have quincunxes. We have an opposition to Saturn and Neptune conjunct. We have sextiles down there to Jupiter. So everything's effectively activated at this moment in time. This is the 9th of March. We have Jupiter stationing direct on the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th. Jupiter making significant angles to all the planets for the most part. We see sextiles there to Mercury and also to Earth. We see a sextile to Uranus, a square to Venus. We see a trine to Saturn and Neptune. We see this quincunx to Mars. We see this opposition to Pluto. So this is the sort of heliocentric planetary geometry that we look at, a lot of the research of Robert Nelson, that gives us indication that a geomagnetic disturbance is more likely, and or enhanced solar activity. We do have some sunspots on the Earth-facing side. They've been very quiet, so I would lean a little bit more towards enhanced geomagnetic volatility. All that adds on to that loading that's taking place by the sun. So you have long rhythms and short rhythms. Like a long period rhythm is the solar cycle loading energy into our planet, which affects not only the Earth geophysically, but also us in terms of our behavior, in terms of our societal movements and trends, and things, again, like these spontaneous social processes, but also our consciousness, individual and collective. Keep in mind, we're not separated. We're all one, right? We are one human consciousness. Each of our brains, the best science is strongly indicating that our brains are more of a very high-tech receiver, and we are tuned towards our consciousness. But if there's certain things you can do to open up that frequency range that you can access, which connects you into the consciousness of not just other people, but also of other beings and of the planet and of the solar system and the cosmos and more. So it's an illusion that we are individual. We are all connected together. So when things are happening at the collective scale that are significant, we are all part of this. We are all partly responsible for that. We may not necessarily agree with some of the things, but we are all one human organism, one frequency, one energy, and the energy that we have coming up now for the next 5 years is really, really critical. So that solar cycle is a very long period rhythm of energy coming in, energizing things, and then things like this sort of heliocentric planetary geometry in a geomagnetic storm or a solar flare is a shorter period variation and spike on top of that. So you look at the cohesive picture. Now, here we have our data, our historic data, looking at sunspots, earthquakes, and nukes, nuclear testing. Going back to solar cycle 19. Here's solar cycle 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, up-to-date data going to the end of 2025, all right? We see our high sunspot counts there. This black line is the 12-month average, cutting through the monthly data. I color this via cold to hot colors, so we see that when we're in a maximum period, the colors are much hotter than they are during the minimum. Pretty easy to read. Purple line is our nuclear energy release yearly, because not only do we know the official count of nuclear tests, but also the payloads of those nukes. I'm not saying that's exactly accurate. No, there could have been some covert stuff. Who knows? But regardless, with the official data that we have, Here's the amount of nuclear energy that was released in terawatt hours. This is this right side y-axis, terawatt hours, logarithmic scale, 10x jumps each time. And then we also see our yearly seismic energy release also measured in terawatt hours. See how they're actually fairly similar in scale? So when we were playing with all these nukes back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and 80s, we were releasing energy in some aspects equivalent to the natural energy release of the Earth seismically. For example, here in the early 60s, we had a low year for seismic energy release. This is, I believe, like 62 right there. Look, we actually released more energy through nuclear testing than the Earth did seismically in 1962. That's insane. So there's a lot to cover with this data. We'll go through it quickly. But the first thing I want you to notice is look at this huge spike that occurred around 1955 to 1965. Not only was our solar cycle very, very strong, we also had the most seismic energy release in our observational recorded history, our data record, right here with the magnitude 9.5 in Chile back in 1960, magnitude 9.2 Alaska. So those are two, that's 1964. In between, interesting how exactly in between we had the most amount of nuclear energy released during this time frame. And in general, we see that our overall high amount for nuclear testing right here from 1955 to 65, corresponding with our strongest solar cycle since solar cycle 3, mind you, back around the American Revolution, and also our greatest seismic energy release. Then in general with this data, you will see that we see a bit more seismic energy release during descending phases and minimums globally versus maximums. The correlation's there, you kind of have to look at it carefully. But for example, here we see it's up higher during this descending minimum phase, and then we see it drop down during this solar maximum. We see it go back up again. Now it kind of stays steady for this solar maximum, but look at the next minimum. We see that's higher than this maximum period. So you have to kind of look at it relative to the next one at times. Then we see that it was steady again with this one. We're getting this ramp up, but then look here, after that maximum, big release of seismic energy, 2004 magnitude 9 Sumatra, and then 2011 magnitude 9.1 Japan. And so that's right there slotted in that descending and minimum and ascending phase in between 23 and 24. Now look, we've been descending down after this big wave for many decades, finally bucking the trend here in 2025 with this magnitude 8.8 megaquake and all the other earthquakes that occurred. Look at how during 24, when we had our highest amount of solar activity with this solar cycle 25 and our solar maximum, 2024, look at how our seismic energy release was quite a bit lower, right? So look at that perfect inverse correlation there. And you see that all across this data set here. So really interesting, we see this nuclear testing officially, the official test going and dying out in the 80s, and just a couple blips over here with India, Pakistan, and North Korea in the 21st century, basically. So this data is suggesting that we have more seismicity coming our way, and we probably have some more nuclear testing. And so the point is, if that is to occur, at least with solar cycle 19, we saw that when we had one of them, we had all of them. And here's kind of the next thing to really check out. Here we see our Neptune-Pluto waxing sextile versus global nuclear test, okay? Because what we have is effectively Neptune and Pluto in a geometric alignment. I can show you that data really quick. Let me pull this up for you. And this will be right here. I'm just going to show you this visually, okay? Right here, we see Pluto and Neptune. They are 60 degrees apart right now. That's a sextile, 60 degrees, okay? Well, if we go back, and we'll just simply, I think I have to drag Earth first, yeah. We'll simply drag Neptune back to Pluto like this, okay? Here, we see when they were in conjunction. This was the very end of the 1800s. It was like 1892, 1893 that they were in conjunction, okay? Well, then Neptune being faster moved ahead. But at times, Pluto and Neptune move the same speed. They have an orbital resonance. So we start to get them entering into a sextile arrangement in the 40s, 50s, and going up to the 90s, because now Pluto and Neptune are kind of traveling the same speed here. And so as a result, they were in this opening sextile for a while. The first main configuration. I mean, you have smaller ones, you have like semi-squares and such, 45-degree angles. But in general, the first big configuration is this opening sextile. This is a 492-year-long cycle. It's one of the most foundational planetary resonance cycles that we have identified, okay? So very, very important. We can X out of that. Here we see this waxing sextile as demonstrated by degrees of separation between them for their entire phase. So this is 0 degrees, meaning that they are right next to each other. And then we have 10 degrees, and that's when they start to break out of orb, you could say. For these outer planets, Richard Tarnas, for example, uses a 15-degree orb. But for this data graphic here from Archetypal Explorer, we'll set it to 10, okay? So starting in the 40s, they started to get close together. Right around 1950, they are now in this configuration where they're very close together. You see right there only at maximum about 2 degrees apart, but really in that 0 to 1 degree range. And then they kind of dip down, oscillating year by year, going from 1.5 degrees separation to about 5 degrees of separation. But 5 degrees is very, very close for an outer planet configuration. Okay, so this is not insignificant. And they stay in this all the way through. Here we now have the end of the Cold War, effectively, right? The Cold War is defined by the proliferation of nuclear weapons and the testing of them. Here we see our nuclear tests that were done across time by different nation states, okay? United States, Russia being the big ones. We also have France, China, so on. Look at this. Look at how right as we go into this Neptune-Pluto waxing sextile, which is a long duration, we had this huge burst of nuclear testing. Okay, and we looked at that actual energy release with our last graphic here, again, with the purple line. And one key thing to note with this data is that there's actually a lot of similarity between the energetic signature of an earthquake and of a nuclear bomb. They're very similar. They produce similar things, like in terms of Earth reactions, you could say. So when there's resonance, there's energy and information transfer. So when we were doing these nuclear tests, we were interacting with the Earth in ways that are beyond our current understanding. And I think that's still playing out. I don't think these nuclear tests did nothing. I think we're still dealing with the fallout. Millions of people died from that radiation fallout, right? Cancer, and some of them more direct from the actual shockwave blast, like millions and millions of people affected by this. This is still in effect. And we see that this waxing sextile now is ramping up because we kind of declined out of it. This whole nuclear thing in many ways quieted down, right? Here we see that our solar cycle in this time frame is also quite weak. Solar cycle 25, or solar cycle 24, sorry, was quite weak. So we had low solar activity. We had this Neptune-Pluto waxing sextile very low. We had very few planetary great conjunctions in 2010 to 2020. We had one in 2011, and then the next one was in 2020. So we had very few outer planet configurations, conjunctions at least, during that time frame. Now we're back in it, okay? We had a lot of outer planet conjunctions in 2020 going through 2025. We just had the Saturn-Neptune great conjunction February 20th of 2026, and we are now back in this. And notice that this goes to about 2033, 2034, okay? So that's 2026 right there, I believe. We're in this, baby. Like, that might be 2025. Regardless, we are back in this. And this is an opening sextile for a 492-year cycle, which gives you a sense of the scale and scope and the significance And also we see the themes baked into the prior first act. This is the final third act, you could say. I guess this is act 1, act 2, but they kind of blend together, right? This is the final third act. So there's probably going to be some sort of conclusion, initial conclusion to these themes here. So this is a huge choice point of what do we do? Because we have absolutely crazy things happening right now in the Middle East. Here we see an oil depot that was lit, it was bombed, now it's burning. This is, I think, fairly recent footage from yesterday, the 7th, up to maybe now, today. I mean, this is, you don't put out a fire like this all that quickly. The biggest oil depot outside of Tehran. So this is no small thing. And consider the environmental effect of that, right? All that smoke and soot and ash and everything gets mixed into the atmosphere of the Earth. We just had all this energy come in from solar maximum. We're still, very much in higher solar activity versus a solar minimum. So max, descending phase, whatever, we're still, in general, having more energy from the sun come in. We see weather on this planet becoming more and more volatile. We're having a warming trend globally overall that has been accelerating for the past 15, 20 years, quite significantly. And now we're going to be adding more energy in to this all from things like this. And global leaders are, I don't want to call them leaders, stupid, degenerates. Global degenerates are escalating this further and further. So, the thing that I was thinking of this morning was about the consciousness shift on our planet. I don't even want to keep this on anymore. It kind of sickens me. The consciousness shift on our planet, there's some people saying, and this isn't political, but there's just some people saying, the regime there is bad, they've been hurting people, and so it's a good thing that we're liberating them. And yeah, the regime in Iran has done terrible things. We're also doing terrible things. And by we, I don't mean us, actually, right? The degenerates are doing terrible things. So people are waking up. Here's the point. People are waking up to the fact that it's just enough is enough. You can't make a wrong decision to fix a wrong. Like, two wrongs don't make a right. It's just the human suffering aspect just has to stop. Just because someone or something else, created human suffering doesn't mean more human suffering is going to fix that. Our consciousness is expanding such that people are just becoming completely intolerant of this sort of human suffering. The sort of human suffering that doesn't behoove anyone and keeps us in a low frequency state. So that's really what it's about. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's just who's inflicting human suffering on this planet, right? Who's going out there and hurting people or things, right, versus not. That's kind of where we are. That's how I see it, at least. And I think collectively, there's an increasing groundswell of people who are just becoming completely intolerant to any of it. And it doesn't matter who or what is inflicting it, it is simply not going to be tolerated. Because that's the decision point that we have, right? Let's go back to this. We saw how we responded back with this Neptune-Pluto waxing sextile going from the 40s to the 90s, okay? We had World War II right here, millions dead, millions more killed in oppressive regimes during this time frame, massive nuclear tests, millions killed as a result of that, right? On the brink of nuclear annihilation for a long stretch of time during this time frame. We got very, very close a few times, not only with the Cuban Missile Crisis, but they were even transporting nukes in planes, the United States, over the eastern seaboard. One of them dropped, like it fell out of the plane, and thankfully it did not explode when it impacted the ground. Like, what? It could have been an accidental nuclear bomb that went off back, I think it's like the 70s, you have to look it up, right? This is now the choice point. How do we respond, right? Because there's also tremendous exploration into human consciousness and new societal structures and movements of this nature, like massive environmental movements were taking place during this time frame. People recognizing that there were certain rivers and watersheds that were completely toxic and polluted, and projects to regenerate and clean those, right? So a lot of amazing things happened during this time frame. And so this is just one expression of the Neptune-Pluto energy. There's also the other expression where we're learning how to be better shepherds of our planet. We have a choice to make right here collectively. And because we are one human organism, right, the energy and the frequency that we resonate is what makes up the unified collective human consciousness, and that is also resonating for the entire planet, Gaia's super consciousness, all one organism at that scale. And then this is the consciousness of the universe. But the thing is, we are not simply just victims of fate. I do think fate exists to some degree, but we also are liberated with the ability to have free will and to make choices. So how we're going to choose to act during this next 5 years remains to be seen. But we have all this solar energy that's coming in. We likely have more earthquakes coming in as a result of that. These are just normal geophysical rhythms, but we don't probably want to see this, where we just get this burst across everything, right? Where the next solar cycle maybe is really strong, nukes are dropping, or there's tests, right? Renewed testing, huge earthquakes. Like, that's not a rosy time frame. And we don't have to choose that. And we don't have to be led into it blindly and ignorantly. We can, again, make a choice. I would like to see a better expression of this energy than what happened here, personally. I did not live through this, though maybe in another life I did, who knows, whatever, right? But we have a very, the history will be decided during this next 5 years. I mean, history is always being decided, but really, because Saturn-Neptune conjunction 2026, next big conjunction is 2032, Saturn and Uranus. So it went Saturn and Neptune in 89, then it was Jupiter and Saturn in 2020. Well, it was Saturn and Neptune in 1989, then it was Saturn Pluto in 2020, January 2020. Then it was Saturn Jupiter 2020, December. We also had, of course, a Saturn Jupiter cycle in the year 2000. So Jupiter's going fast. But you basically have Saturn conjunct Neptune, Saturn conjunct Pluto, Saturn conjunct Uranus. Next, it's like the final kind of click, click, click that's going on. That's going to kind of be the end of this cycle that's being driven by Saturn, which is really important, which is where this aspect of fate comes in a little bit, and karma, and what are the rewards that we reap. What seeds are we sowing, and what's our harvest going to be? Saturn is the farmer archetypally, also the scientist in some aspects. So, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Are we going to play stupid games collectively and win stupid prizes? Or are we going to create a beautiful world? We can choose, right? We have tremendous revelations being dropped by the Epstein files, and there's global PDFs and worse that are basically being exposed. So we have some choices to make, and what we're going to tolerate, what we're not going to tolerate. Personally, like, my body's a temple. I only want the best. I'm not tolerating this, right? I'm completely intolerant of this. It doesn't matter where the injustice comes from. I don't care, right? I'm not attached to any tribe. The programming, I'm sure there's some there, right? I'm always doing my best to keep my programming slate clean, but I'm basically running Linux, baby. And there is, if you have old programming baggage and you have sides still at this point, other than just wanting human suffering to be end. Hey, and this is my belief, my opinion, but we got to move beyond this. We got to move beyond left versus right, right versus left. It's really about how can we support each other being good humans, right? Where there's those that prey on people. It's very sad. So that is the main update. One last thing to cover is that we did have this fireball just now, the past few hours, fly over Amsterdam. There we see it. I think this is Amsterdam. Either way, it's the Netherlands. Maybe it's not Amsterdam, but it's definitely the Netherlands. So this fireball coming in, we just had, I think, 2 back-to-back in like 2 days over Canada. So we are entering this time frame of us being in the debris stream of interstellar object 3I Atlas. I can show you that really quick. I've talked about it before. We don't know kind of how much we may get from this. That's really the open question mark. But we are certainly in the time frame. If we were to get debris from 3I Atlas, now would be the time. So let me show you. Here we have our live view of interstellar object 3I Atlas, and we see it's getting very close to Jupiter. This is actually forward a few days. Let me go back to today. It's going to have its closest approach to Jupiter. This is a very benevolent thing, I think. On the 16th, we'll go forward to that. Right here is its closest approach to Jupiter, and you'll notice that Earth, at this point in time, is passing within this region that 3I Atlas moved through back in October, November. Okay, if we go back to that, you'll see it right here. Here's October, there's November, boom, it's out. So we're not going directly through the trail, but remember there was massive jets on 3I Atlas, and the radiative force from the sun doesn't push everything away, only pushes away grains of a small enough size. If things are bigger, you know, larger grains, pebbles, whatever, they can then circle into the sun. They will have some acceleration going this way, of course, because of the momentum of 3I Atlas in the beginning, but also remember there was this anti-velocity jet that we called the sunward jet for a long time, blasting off this direction. So it is possible that certain things were launched off at an anti-velocity to 3I Atlas, which around this time would be negative 68 kilometers per second. It's possible that they blasted off at relative velocities similar to that, and as a result are just falling in like this. And if there are some of certain sizes that have a slow enough infall rate, we will intersect them. So we're going to have to watch to see if we have more fireballs come in over the next month or two. But really this month right now is kind of the key window. So that is what's happening there. Tremendous amount happening overall. And yeah, we have a big choice point to come up. I just wanted to kind of give you that zoomed out view to help you make sense of what's occurring. But even small actions, and this is not small, but you know, small actions like this affect the weather and affect things going forward. The amount of bombs being dropped on both sides, across the board, whatever. Again, I don't fucking care. Just all these things being dropped is not helping anyone. It's literally raining like oil and ash down over Iran right now. So you think that we're gonna have a good hurricane season coming up, right? It's probably not gonna be great, folks, right? And you know, cyclone season over in Asia, probably a monsoon season, probably won't be great. Iran's pretty close to that. So this isn't just localized there. This affects everybody. And of course, as we discussed, this is affecting everybody's consciousness because we are all one. We're not separated. So these sort of things are happening right now. We should be aware of them, and we should do what we can to actually bring those that are causing these sort of issues to account. Because, well, in the United States, they did it back during the Revolution. Right? They did check out what the French did during the French Revolution, right? It was crazy, but hey, they did it. Check out what variety of our ancestors have stepped up to do over millennia across time, right? We're just very sleepy right now, you could say. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. So That is the update for you all. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has supported the channel just in general, for your viewership, for your time, for your love, your energy, and for everyone that's given a super thanks today. Thank you all so much. So if you like the video, please smash that thumbs up button, share this with others, get the word out. If they are unaware of these subjects, this is a great video to bring them up to speed because we covered so many different things. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns, geologist, geophysicist, your cosmic bro, here to help you understand what's happening energetically. We examine all the things. The next big thing coming up is Jupiter stationing direct in the constellation of Gemini, in between Castor and Pollux, and in alignment with Sirius. So Castor and Pollux were their twin brothers. The Spartan queen Leda gave birth to them. Castor is mortal, Pollux is divine, because the father of Castor was the king of Sparta, and the father of Pollux was Zeus himself. And there was this decision point because one was mortal, one was immortal. What did they choose? We're kind of there right now, right? Do we want to choose a more 3D materialistic reality, or do we want to go to a higher, more divine 5D reality and consciousness? That's our choice. But all the possibilities there, and now we're actually a little bit aware of it now. That's the beauty of this Pluto-Neptune sextile, is that we're aware of these possibilities, and we can act on them, and we can choose. And so what do we choose? That's really the take-home message. So thank you all so much. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all very soon.